My name is Mei Lin, and at 18, I had always been told by my friends and family that I was clever and determined, qualities I clung to like armor in a world that often underestimated me. During the Song dynasty of Imperial China, I lived in a quiet village cradled by misty mountains, far from the grandeur of the imperial capital. To us, this was the Middle Kingdom, the center of the civilized world. Our land was vast and majestic, ruled by the Son of Heaven, the Emperor himself, whose ministers governed with wisdom and skill, or so we believed. Stories of their competence and compassion reached even our remote village, tales of how they managed the state's affairs, cultivated prosperity, and of how our generals and brave warriors defended the empire's borders against the barbarians who lurked beyond. I had never seen the emperor, nor did I expect to in my lifetime. To a peasant girl like me, he was a distant, almost mythical figure. His presence felt only through the taxes we paid and the officials who occasionally passed through our village. The emperor's armies were said to be powerful, protecting us from those who sought to disrupt the harmony of our land. Yet in our secluded valley, nestled beneath the shadow of the mountains, such threats seemed far away, like the emperor himself. Here life was simpler. We toiled in the fields, celebrated at the festivals, and relied on one another to survive. The beauty of the land surrounded us, the terraced rice paddies, the winding rivers, and the forests that seemed to stretch endlessly into the heavens. Yet even in such a place, the hardships of life were ever present. My mother's illness was a cruel reminder of how fragile our existence could be. It was this fragility, this desperation, that drove me to seek out the White Lotus Temple. Though small in stature and, dare I say, petite, I'd learned to carry myself with confidence and strength, and my quick mind was something I prided myself on. My friends, Li Wei and Chen Yong, often teased me for being stubborn, but I knew they respected me for it. Li Wei, a tall and thoughtful young man, was the quiet one among us. His calm demeanor hid a sharp mind, and though he rarely spoke up, when he did, his words carried weight. Chen Yong, on the other hand, was the bold one. His laughter was infectious, and his ambition burned brightly, though it sometimes got him into trouble. He worked tirelessly on his family's farm, tending to the rice paddies and raising poultry. Despite the back-breaking labor, he often spoke of grand plans to expand the farm, dreaming of a day when his family could live without worry. The three of us had grown up together, and when we decided to journey to the White Lotus Temple, I had no idea how much that decision would change us. The famed White Lotus Temple was a sacred site dedicated to Guanyin, the goddess of compassion. Guanyin, often depicted as a serene female figure clad in flowing robes and holding a vase of pure water, is revered as a protector of the suffering and a guide to enlightenment. Her compassion is said to be boundless, and many sought her blessings in times of despair. She is an all-seeing, all-hearing being who is called upon by worshippers in times of uncertainty, despair, and fear. Rumors had reached their village that the temple granted Guanyin's blessings to those who prayed to her with sincerity. Our group of three friends each wanted something very much. Li Wei hoped to succeed in the imperial examinations as a scholar and bring honor to his family. He hoped to become an imperial official through success in the examinations. Chen Yong wanted prosperity for his business to lift his struggling family out of poverty. As for me, my only wish was for my mother's health to be restored. She had been ill for months, and no remedies seemed to help. The thought of losing her was unbearable, so when I heard the temple's reputation, I didn't hesitate. Even the slightest chance of curing my mother's illness was worth a try, especially if it's as simple as merely visiting a temple. Our journey to the White Lotus Temple began with hope, but as we approached, an unease settled over me. The air grew heavier, and the forest around us fell silent. The temple grounds were overgrown with thorny vines, and the grand gates hung open, creaking in the wind. I should have trusted my instincts then, but desperation is a powerful thing. Inside, a priest greeted us. His face was shrouded in shadow, but his voice was warm, almost too warm. "What brings you to the White Lotus Temple?" he asked, his tone smooth and inviting. Li Wei stepped forward, his voice steady despite sounding somewhat uneasy. We seek the blessings of Guanyin to guide us in our struggles and grant us the strength to overcome them. Li Wei then added, I humbly ask for success in the imperial examinations, so that I may bring honor to my family and secure a prosperous future. Chen Yong stepped forward next, his voice filled with determination. I ask for prosperity for my family, so that we may escape the grip of poverty and live with dignity. When it was my turn, I stepped forward, my voice soft but steady. I ask for my mother's health to be restored, I said, holding back the tear and the fear that threatened to creep into my words. The priest smiled, but there was something unsettling about it. Guanyin hears all who come with pure hearts, he said, but know that your wishes come at a price. Are you willing to pay it? We exchanged uneasy glances, but nodded. Each of us placed an offering on the altar. Li Wei's scholarly inkstone, Chen Yong's ancestral jade pendant, and my silk ribbon. The priest began to chant, and as his voice echoed through the temple, the air grew colder. Shadows danced on the walls, and a faint, sickly sweet scent filled the room. I felt a chill run down my spine, but it was too late to turn back. At first, it seemed our prayers had been answered, each of us blessed in ways we had scarcely dared to hope. Li Wei, once reserved and hesitant, grew more confident with each passing day. His words carried a newfound eloquence, and his sharp mind seemed to cut through even the most complex problems with ease. When the time came for the imperial examinations, he passed with flying colors, earning the highest honors. News of his success spread quickly, and soon, an appointment arrived from the imperial court. Li Wei was to leave for the city of Changsha, where he would serve as an official. It was a dream realized, one that promised him both prestige and the chance to bring honor to his family. Chen Yong's fortune was no less remarkable. His family's rice paddies, once modest and barely yielding enough to get by, began to overflow with abundant harvests. The poultry he raised grew healthy and multiplied, fetching high prices at the market. Gold and silver began to fill his family's coffers, and for the first time in years, they could afford to repair their home and buy fine clothes. Chen Yong walked with his head held high, his ambition burning brighter than ever as he spoke of expanding their fields and building a future where poverty would be a distant memory. For me, the change was deeply personal. My mother, once frail and bedridden, began to regain her strength. Her color returned, and her laughter, which I had not heard in months, filled our home once more. She was able to stand, then walk, and soon she was tending to her beloved garden as though her illness had been nothing more than a bad dream. Each day felt like a gift, her recovery a balm to the worry that had weighed on my heart for so long. For a time, we dared to believe that the White Lotus Temple had truly granted us the blessings we had sought. Little did we know, those blessings came with a cost far greater than we could have imagined. Li Wei's ambition consumed him, turning him into someone I barely recognized. Soon his drive to succeed grew insatiable. He began to see people not as friends or neighbors, but as obstacles or tools to be used. He lied, manipulated, and betrayed without a second thought, leaving a trail of broken trust in his wake. I watched helplessly as his kind heart hardened, his once gentle eyes now cold and calculating. Even his family, who had once been so proud of him, grew distant, unable to reconcile the son they loved with the ruthless man he had become. For Chen Yong's family, prosperity came at a terrible cost. His father grew weak, unable to rise from his bed. His younger siblings, once full of energy, became pale and listless. Even his mother, the heart of their family, began to wither before our eyes. No healer could explain their illness, and no remedy brought relief. Chen Yong, once so full of laughter, became a shadow of himself, burdened by guilt and desperation as he watched his family suffer. As for me, I began to notice changes that chilled me to my core. Shadows moved where there should have been none, creeping along the walls as if alive. At night, I heard whispers, soft and menacing, their words just beyond comprehension. They seemed to call my name, to beckon me toward something dark and unseen. I felt a weight pressing on my chest as though the air around me had thickened with malevolence. My mother's health improved, just as I had prayed for, but every time I looked into her eyes, I wondered if the shadows were watching through her too. It was clear that something was terribly wrong, not just with me, but with all of us. The blessings we had sought from the White Lotus Temple were twisted, poisoned by the malevolent force that had taken root there. And deep down, I knew that we couldn't escape its grip unless we uncovered the truth and faced the darkness head on. One night, I dreamt of the temple. The air was heavy, and the statues of Guanyin cracked and crumbled, revealing monstrous shapes beneath. Their hollow eyes seemed to follow me as I stood frozen. A woman's voice whispered in my ear, soft but urgent, "This place is no longer mine. Seek the truth, and you shall find it." The figures began to lurch toward me, their twisted forms reaching out, and I jolted awake, my heart pounding. I had no doubt that Guanyin delivered her message to me through my dream. Her voice and the crumbling statues lingered in my mind, leaving me with a single, unshakable resolve. I had to uncover the truth. Liwi was reluctant to help me at first, dismissing my concerns as paranoia. But when I pointed out the terrible changes happening in our lives, he agreed to investigate. Together, Liwei and I began to search deeper about the history of the White Lotus Temple. We sought advice from a reclusive scholar in a nearby village, a man whose reputation for knowledge of the arcane and spiritual matters preceded him. When we shared our story, he listened intently, his face growing grim as he considered our plight. After a moment of silence, he revealed the name of the malevolent spirit residing at the temple, Xian Mo. The scholar told us Xian Mo's tale, a story steeped in tragedy and betrayal. Centuries ago, Xian Mo had been a devoted priest at the White Lotus Temple, admired for his kindness and wisdom. The villagers loved him, and his popularity grew, but it also bred envy among his colleagues. Consumed by jealousy, they conspired against him, accusing him of stealing temple funds. Their lies reached the local governor, a man eager to assert his authority. Without a fair trial, the governor ordered Xianmo's execution. On the day of his death, as he was led to his fate, Xianmo cursed those who had wronged him, vowing to return and exact his revenge. His spirit, fueled by anger and pain, lingered long after his death, eventually corrupting the temple he had once served with devotion. "If we are to defeat Xian Mo," Li Wei said after the scholar finished his tale, "we must find a way to sever his connection to the temple. His power is rooted in the altar." The scholar nodded and provided us with a ritual he believed could banish Xian Mo's spirit. It was no simple task. The ritual required great courage and unwavering faith. We would need to invoke Guanyin herself, calling upon her divine presence to overpower the malevolent spirit. The weight of the task settled heavily on my shoulders, but I knew there was no other way. Li Wei and I prepared ourselves for the challenge ahead, understanding the risks we faced. To my surprise, Chen Yong, guilt-ridden over the suffering his family had endured, joined us. His determination to make amends matched our resolve, and together, we steeled ourselves for the confrontation with the darkness that had taken hold of the temple. Returning to the temple, I felt a sense of dread unlike anything I had ever experienced. The air was thick with malice, and the once sacred place now seemed like a tomb. As we stepped inside, the priest, now fully revealed as Xian Mo's vessel, greeted us with a chilling laugh that sent a shiver down my spine. His form shifted in the dim light, and I recoiled as his skin hardened like cracked clay. Black spots spread across his face and hands, and boils began to form, oozing dark, putrid liquid. Decay seemed to consume him, eating away at his flesh. His hair turned brittle and grey, falling in clumps to expose patches of raw, pale scalp. His face grew gaunt, his cheeks hollow, and his lips shriveled, revealing jagged, yellowed teeth. But it was his eyes that terrified me most. His pupils had vanished, leaving only pure white orbs that glowed faintly in the dark. He was no longer a man, but the very embodiment of a vengeful ghost, a twisted mockery of the priest he had once been. "You cannot defy me," he sneered, his voice echoing unnaturally, as if it came from everywhere at once. "Your desires have bound you to me. you are mine." I watched in horror as the ghastly figure dropped to all fours, crawling toward us like a primeval creature that had just found its prey. His hands and feet had transformed into sharp talons, massive claws that opened with a malicious, predatory energy. He let out an otherworldly hiss, a sound so high-pitched and unnatural that it felt like it was tearing at my very soul. His face contorted into an exaggerated sneer, one that a hunter might wear as they prepared to deliver the finishing blow to their prey. His expression was one of glee and pure malice all at once. I stepped forward, clutching the talisman inscribed with Guanyin's blessings. My voice was steady, though my heart raced in my chest. "We may have faltered, but we will not be your slaves," I declared, trying to summon all the courage I had. "Guanyin's mercy is greater than your malice." Together, we began the ritual, chanting the incantation the scholar had taught us. The air grew thick with tension as Jian Mo's form twisted and writhed in the shadows. His screams filled the temple, an agonizing sound that reverberated through the walls. He lashed out at us, his claws raking across our defenses, but we held firm, our voices growing louder and more resolute. Then, a radiant light filled the room, and I felt the presence of Guanyin herself. She appeared before us, serene and commanding, draped in flowing robes that seemed to shimmer with divine energy. Her visage radiated compassion and strength, and her voice, when she spoke, was like a soothing melody. "Xian Mo," she said, her voice calm yet unwavering. "Your time here has ended. You have caused enough suffering." With a simple wave of her hand, Guanyin unleashed a surge of divine energy. Xian Mo let out one final, anguished scream before his form disintegrated into nothing but a faint shadow, a lingering spirit powerless to cause any more harm. In that moment, Guanyin appeared to us as an all-powerful deity. Xian Mo, on the other hand, cannot appear any more powerless, a stark contrast to his threatening and malicious appearance just a moment ago. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the temple, once again, seemed to return to its former glory. Guanyin turned to us, her gaze gentle yet firm. "You have shown courage and repentance," she said. "The path forward will not be easy, but you have the strength to make amends." Her attention then shifted to the lingering presence of Xian Mo's spirit. "Xian Mo, though your deeds were dark, the injustice done to you was great. For the kindness and good deeds of your past, I shall grant you another chance. In your next life, you shall walk the path of a monk once more, and the opportunity to attain enlightenment shall be yours." As the spirit of Xiao Mo faded, the false blessings Xian Mo had granted us began to unravel. Li Wei's sharp mind dulled, his once clear thoughts now clouded. But he found solace in teaching others, helping them rebuild their lives and relationships. Chen Yong's wealth, which had come so quickly, began to diminish, but his family's health slowly returned. He dedicated himself to helping his community, working tirelessly to make amends for the suffering caused by their prosperity. As for me, I felt the inevitable sorrow settling inside my chest. As the weeks passed, my mother's condition worsened. The false blessing that had once brought her fleeting strength was now gone, and with it, any hope of her recovery. Her body, once vibrant and full of life, withered away, leaving only the fragile shell of the woman she had been. I did everything I could, tended to her with the herbs I had learned to gather, whispered comforting words in her ear, and stayed by her side as much as possible. But despite my efforts, her strength continued to fade, and eventually she passed away in her sleep, her hand gently resting in mine. For a time, I couldn't understand why this had to happen, why my mother, after all the suffering she had endured, had to leave me. I had been so desperate to save her, to undo the damage that Xian Mo had caused. But the reality was that her death, though painful, was a part of the natural course of life, something I had once refused to accept. It took time, but I slowly began to accept that illness and death are unavoidable parts of existence. We are born, we live, and we die, each of us bound by this cycle. My mother's passing, though devastating, was not an injustice. It was simply the way of the world. In time, I came to accept her death. not as something to be feared or fought against, but as something to be mourned, respected, and remembered. Her passing did not diminish her life or the love we shared. Though scarred by the ordeal, I found my calling as a healer. I used my experiences to guide and protect others, hoping to prevent them from falling into the same traps we had. The three of us returned to our humble mountain village, forever changed by our journey and experiences. The White Lotus Temple stood as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked desire, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring mercy of Guanyin. Together, we vowed to live lives of humility and compassion, honoring the lessons we had learned.